I believe we have a nice composition of panelists. We have a representative of dismal profession, same as I do most of my time, Ginter. Then we have a global producer who has a nice feel how does the real life for a producer looks like pretty much around the world. And here we have a representative of a European institution, Aleš from DG Competition, who will be very likely blamed by everybody for everything, but as I know him for many years, he can be aware of that, return the fire. Yeah? First thing. Second, my comment is, of course, timing of this block is still relatively happy, given it should end up before 220, but then it will be less happy with coffee break and everything. So thank you all for coming. I myself really appreciate it. I'm sure panelists appreciate it as well. The third comment, the first block, I will try to run more on questions and discussion among panelists and myself. The second block after coffee break will be hopefully based mostly on your questions. So I will try to structure it like that. And now let me do a very short introduction before I give a word to panelists, which I urge to keep 3 minutes limit. I know it's difficult, but it's a rule. And let me say a few things on behalf of industry, Europe, world, and this country. First, industry matters for us a lot. Let's keep in mind that the new Europe is the most industrial part of the Europe. I always use Romania, which a lot of people may have as an agricultural country in mind. Industry in composition of Romanian value added is same important as industry is in Germany, give and take. We are the most industrial-based European nation, according Eurostat statistics. And industry for us is about 1/4 more important than for Germany. So this is an industrial heart of Europe we are talking about, and industry matters for us. Second comment is, I believe we can take 2 things from the case study of automotive from the morning. European current problems are in 2 areas, mainly for industry, mainly energy prices and regulation. Regulation that is not, I would say, that is not stable and that is not pragmatic. This is my take on conclusions from the morning panel. And third thing to introduction, the process of losing is a process in which things are not closed. I mean, there's been a lot of headlines on industry dying, or same headlines you got from energy, the possible of black grounds and so on and so on. And everybody thinks like companies closures, or everybody thinks like I will have no electricity, no light, nothing. De facto, the situation develops in a different way, as anybody who was in practice knows. The companies are run down but not invested in. There are no new investments. This is how you slow down the scale of industry. And in terms of electricity, by the way, you will not experience no heating. Simply the first thing will be closed, then the second thing will be closed. This will again hit the industry if in such situation. The last thing will be that would be switched off would be, of course, your electricity and then hospitals. But it's good to keep in mind that the things are developing slowly. And in this respect, few not so nice numbers. 25 years ago, quarter of century ago, Europe share on world GDP was about the same like US. Then China came. But the US share on world GDP is about the same, only slightly lower than 25 years ago. The EU share, no matter whether you take it with UK or not, is something like 17–18%. So it's 1/3, maybe more, lower than 25 years ago. We still consider ourselves. I need to working. We may consider ourselves still to be a pattern the world follows, and we may reassure ourselves that this is our situation. The problem is the world ignores that. Like last time we were in that position, it was before a Lehman crisis, I believe, from my own experience. So no matter whether you think that we will establish some or this or that, that standard, forget that. Yeah. I mean, like we are 16% of the world economy and we are falling. And in that respect, last two numbers, 25 years ago, US with a quarter of world economy was also a place where about a quarter of government expenditures were done. Europe, at the same situation in '97, had similar 25% of the world economy and 30% of governmental expenditures. Yeah. So government was overweighted in Europe 25 years ago. Currently, we are in this situation of 17, 18%, if you want, and 25% of governmental expenditures. US is still at 25, I mean, like, so it's obviously the government is not a solution. Size of government, size of official structures in Europe is a part of the problem, and we do not, I would say, take it seriously so far. So with that, let me end up and ask Ginter to start with, I believe, geopolitical expose on 3 slides, and please, the floor is yours.
So it's a pleasure to be here, I think already for the 3rd time in Kostelec, and yeah, coming from Vienna, being part of Central Europe, a born German economist, so we'll also hear some critical words on the German economic model that we cannot easily transfer to Europe. Yeah, I will start this session with this clash of these industrialized civilizations. And let me say what is very important to understand, and currently the slides are not moving, that geopolitics are hitting economics massively. So possibly, yeah, the organizers can move the slide. So here are all the dimensions we are seeing from a practical perspective where geopolitics is hitting the economics in the day-to-day business, in the financial flows. And we think going forward, trade regulation, infrastructure, economic policy will be massively influenced by geopolitics. And we in Europe are not fully understanding this game yet. And especially, as I have to say, Germany is not fully understanding this game. There is no geopolitical debate in Germany, no geopolitical culture. The German economic model was for all the time built on the thing, everything is freely available on the world market at fair prices. And this is not how the US is running the shop even, yeah? And we will see this later. So we have to think smart about trade regulations, restrictions, strategic trade agreements, regulation, infrastructure, and industrial policies. The important thing is whether Europe really has a leeway or not, this we have to see, and whether our region and players from our region, Central Europe, have their own leeway. I'm rather skeptical, so we have to find European solutions. So maybe let's move to the next slide. It was various times already touched, and here is the dimension. This is on an annual basis what economic and industrial policy subsidies are on the table. China, US, and this is Germany and France. These are all the dimensions we could find in the statistics, and a large part you will find here is cheap loan financing and state-run investment funds. So here we are back to the financing discussion we had earlier. And you see that USA is at least understanding the problem. They are maybe also not willing, and from an economic viewpoint also maybe intellectually not willing to pump the same money like China into this policy field, but we in Europe are really underexposed. Okay. And once again, I think, for instance, as sad as it is, yeah, whether you can do strategic economic and industrial policy the German economic way, I'm more skeptical. So possibly in those dimensions, we could learn a little bit from France, because they have a different approach to various things, and also strategic FDI.
I hate saying so, but I meant 3 minutes seriously.
Yes. So then I will wrap up with my, let me say, final remarks. So on the next slide, there are a few core theses. So we see our region and Europe and some countries are flirting with China. Maybe we should copy and paste the Chinese technology way, how they also let us entering the market with tough conditions. We need much better private-public sector coordination in Europe. Even there are always accusations of lobbying, but otherwise we will never compete with the state-run, let me say, economies. I'm more skeptical that China will really develop as an AI leader. So we as Europe have to be focused on this technology and should be at least smart followers. Even I expect the US to be the leader here. And the biggest challenge I see in the industrial policy is that we want to be green tech, how our industrial companies should be globally compatible in still brown activities if we don't allow this on our home market. And I think this we have to tackle. We had the discussion earlier, but I see this not just in the car industry. We have to work with a world that is maybe not sharing those ambitions, and our companies have to stay credible on that one. And this we have to factor into our industrial policies. And that's all from my side. 5 minutes, sorry, yeah, but very crowded agenda, yeah.
Thanks a lot, and I'll ask Arthur to give us a view of his own, perhaps also some introduction to the industrial complex he leads.
So this is in Slovak language. Okay, for me it's very funny that I am here when you are speaking about money, because in really I am not so good in financial aspects, but I must say that I have experience with 7 different kind of money, from ruble, grivna, coupon, dinar, Slovakian kron, EU, and I would like understand today a bit more, let's say, from industry side, and maybe say you that finally money is not so important like industry. We produce parts with compacting iron powders, or we inject iron powders, and we have very huge know-how behind. We work in 3 generations in this industry. Because of money, because of experts in money, or thanks to mistakes of experts in money, I changed my location from Armenia to Ukraine, from Ukraine to Slovakia. And nowadays, because of these global things, we also open plant in Mexico, in United States, and by the way, Research and Development Center in Vienna in Austria. So you see, we are going to opposite way. No? This is how our parts looks. All these 7 different money and 3 different, really very different country, Armenia, Ukraine, Slovakia, nowadays also Austria. I think we pass all these 30 years history only thanks to the point that we never produce commodity. We have very strong development. This is how looks, or how must look our development engineer. Let's say strong enough to recognize his mistake. I try be polite, and smart enough don't repeat at least the same mistake. Half of our products never produced before by powder metallurgy, and 1/3 even never exist. And this is way how we pass all crises. And during each crisis, usually our turnover grows in sometimes in 60 or 70%. And this is, we almost have not customers in Slovakia, and this was never our target. This is only location of our plant. And 10% of our products we export to China, India, Vietnam, what is very unusual for European company. 10% we have in South America, and more than 20% in the USA and Canada. Of course, our main market is Europe, and we are very curious what will happen in Europe next, let's say, decades. And this is all. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for time discipline. And I'll ask Aleš to give his introduction on the topics of industry in Europe from the point of view of competition and European authorities, perhaps, but also of his own. We are under Chatham rules, so I think there is a bit of leeway.
So, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this excellent event. I'm very happy to be here today. And as Mirek, whom I know a lot for long, introduced me, I'm working for the European Commission, so I'm official. And I'm working for the Directorate General for Competition, DG Comp, famous DG Comp. And in my one slide, which I may try to find, yes, I would like to explain what we are doing and why we believe that competition is still the answer for many European threats. And as I said, competition for us is very important, and what we really hate is industrial policy, and I will explain why. Because we believe that everybody should compete on the merits, which is quality, price, innovation, efficiency, and industrial policy wants to tell us, consumers, what we want to buy. So competition would say the product which is good for consumers, like, for example, the best price, best quality, efficiency, etc., should be the one who should get the preference. On the other hand, industrial policy, like the Green Deal is typically industrial policy, will tell us that we will ban some of products because of environmental issues. So it's not consumer who will decide, but really as an official from Brussels who will deal with another industrial policy. Maybe next Commission won't run the Green Deal, but for example the Industrial Deal, but it will be the same. Again, there will be winners and losers, and someone else will tell us, consumers, what should we buy. So competition should be the answer. When we talk about competition versus state capitalism, so of course, for example, give an example, Chinese state-owned enterprises, they compete on different merits. And of course, the most problematic part of this are subsidies, which were mentioned several times. And for this reason, we have developed in DG Competition the new tool, which is called the Foreign Subsidies Regulation, which aims at tackling typically companies using foreign subsidies for acquisitions and for public procurement in Europe. So even in this particular case, we got a competition tool which can help to compete European companies against, for example, Chinese companies. And we have, of course, other competition tools in our toolbox, which we can discuss later. We control abusive dominant position, cartels, merger regulation, state aid regulation, and of course, public procurement, which is also very important in this game. So, in my later presentation or during your questions, I want to discuss these competition tools which we have in our DG Competition, how to help European companies to compete.
Thanks a lot. Let me start with a round of different questions for each panelist, and then perhaps we will have some interaction on answers after this introduction. Ginter, you said leaders in Green Deal, eh? Shall we as a Europe, given the situation, security and industry, shall we also relax in dirt? Shall we start mining? Shall we start extracting sand gas, which we have in abundance, as we know? Shall we quit banning the natural gas research in Netherlands? I mean, shall we also not to go a little bit in less green things if we want to keep our position in the world? What do you think?
I think I can start touching upon some of the figures you mentioned. So we are not the gravity center of the world anymore. Yeah? Our ambitions are maybe right from a social perspective, from our ethical perspective, so I think we shouldn't give it up at all. And there is some economic rationality trying to be a leader in certain technologies. But I think we are too ambitious. We are trying still that, let me say, our values might be shared by others, which I think is at least questionable. And I see the big challenges, as I mentioned, for our corporates, yeah? How they should stay credible in technologies that we are not allowing locally. Yeah? And they will then anyway produce, yeah, in other locations. They have to build up, for instance, R&D capacity for technologies that are not used in Europe anymore somewhere else. And I think this is maybe not very beneficial for, let me say, European industry. So I think we should find compromises. We shouldn't give up completely. But I think some of the ambitions we are having are too outsized compared how others are seeing the topic.
Well, honestly, I'm not sure if I got the clear answer. Yeah? So to put it in a nutshell, yeah? Shall we start digging lithium in the vicinity of Austrian borders?
Honestly speaking, why not? Yeah? Because we need such things to be independent. We discussed it also in case we have China-Taiwan conflict. Do we then say, look, we don't buy anything from China anymore? Yeah? We can do so, but then we will have a big problem. Or we should have at least some minor capacity in our hands. Otherwise, we don't have strategic autonomy.
Thanks a lot. Arthur, I have a two simple questions for you as an industrialist and entrepreneur. Yeah? If you would get a free money to start a production in some different location in the world, which that would be? And the second question, if you would get a free money to start a research and development in some other part of the world, where that would be? So two locations.
It will be the same, Slovakia for production, and for development I will split this big package of money to two small package or medium package, and one in, like we already done in Austria, to be in Europe, and one in United States.
Thanks a lot. And like my curiosity, Austria because of research capacities or because it's close to Slovakia?
Both.
Thanks. And Aleš, for you, don't we need industrial policy on security grounds?
I would, of course.
You said you hate them. So.
I must say that for me, you remember Státní plánovací komise, State Planning Commission, so to some extent I feel in Brussels like this, being back 30 years ago, then some people decide what to buy. So of course there are security reasons, there are other reasons where we should have some policy, but we have already tools which we can use, like regulation on foreign direct investment, etc. So I still believe that we can use general tools, competition tools, for example, and not allowing officials to decide about European industry. So that's really my, and some of my colleagues, especially from Western countries, they simply do not understand me because they didn't go through the situation when someone was planning our life. So basically, I am a strong believer in competition, and I really think that green deals, but not only green deals, but any industrial deals should be abandoned, and we should focus on competition.
I'm not saying who should respond, but I'm staring at you. Yeah?
So I think on the one hand we have to accept that we have also certain, I would call it positive experience with industrial policy in Europe. Yeah? I think otherwise we wouldn't competing with the US in certain, let me say, sectors. Yeah? I think the airspace sector is pretty obvious where we had some industrial policy. we shouldn't underestimate that we are building on a legacy of industrial policy, be it also in Germany, by the way, in the past, or in France. So I think we shouldn't be naive. And secondly, we are relying on fair competition in Europe. We try to build fair rules in Europe, but the global world economy is not run by fair rules anymore. And I'm doubting that we fully can compensate with regulation the unfair game that is played globally. So I think we have to see in which sectors we have to get more unfair as well. So competition functions when there are same rules and everybody is following the same rules. I'm not seeing this in this geopolitical environment that is hitting more and more economics. So geoeconomics is a part of that one. And we have several economic sectors where you have maybe long-term these network and scale effects, but that are not present in the very beginning. And then it's hard to get the financing. We discussed the financing problem a lot. And secondly, for certain sectors, you need multi-annual financial planning. And this is sometimes also not easy just in a world of fair competition. So that's why I think in certain sectors, we might think about strategic investment, strategic cooperation in Europe, given the changes we have seen over the last 5 years in terms of geoeconomics. I know that this is not flying in Brussels yet. Let's see.
Okay. Arthur, are you afraid of unfair competition? And in case of yes, where that's coming from? What would you be afraid in terms of competition and unfairness?
In reality, we saw that all our, or many of our customers from Germany, Austria, France, England, they close production or they reduce plants in Europe and they transfer a lot of capacity to USA, Mexico, Brazil. This is reality. For us, this is not so big problem because we many years already deliver to their plants in these countries. So we only, let's say, in this case for us, it's only changing of proportion, ratio between what we deliver to Europe and what we deliver to Mexico, USA. But generally, we start see that even some material producers start, I can say, they start be much more active in development. They look how to hold us because and how to increase their business with us. It's really very strange situation in the market. Moreover, I can say that thanks to this situation, we realized 2 acquisitions. And again, it's very curious, one in Poland and one in Sweden. So we transfer 2 plants, 1 plant from Sweden and 1 plant from Poland. So this is not about geographic, this is about, let's say, full European situation. It was possible. If somebody said me 5 years ago that I will transfer production from Sweden, it's crazy. But now this is possible.
May I add just one point? And I think we should also understand everything that China is currently doing in terms of industrial policy, subsidies, investment. The ultimate goal is to dominate the world in 20 to 30 years in these technologies, to dominate the world geopolitically. So the economic agenda is just a means for the political agenda. So, and if we are still trying to accept just economic rationality, I think we wouldn't catch this essence.
I'll let Aleš react to industrial planning, and then rest assured that China will be discussed in this block.
Yeah, I fully agree that we live in an unfair world. So that's the reason why I have mentioned that we have developed tools, competition tools, which can tackle these problems, like the foreign subsidies regulation, where we can really tackle companies using public money and to simply to prohibit acquisitions in Europe will to prohibit using this public money in public tenders in Europe. So I think we have step by step, we have developed tools which are useful. I can mention also, for example, Digital Markets Act, which was developed to protect the European markets against some monopoly behavior of big technology companies like Google, etc. We use, of course, a lot our tool, which is called controlling of abuse of dominant position, where we, you know, cases like Apple, Google, etc. So I think that we have a full set of tools which we can use to battle in Europe, in world. So I really believe that this is better way using competition tools than industrial policy use, anti-dumping tools, etc. So, but as of course, it's my personal opinion.
Okay, well, please, this is what I hoped in. Yeah.
You know, I would like only add, I'm not so big optimist, and what is big difference between Europe and China? China is big and one. Europe is not so big and many different. And what I see here, let's say industry, we eat each other's, but China eat Europe. Many of my German and not only German suppliers already eat it by Chinese. I receive every few months some idea or request to sell company. And if 10 years ago it was potential clients or let's say potential partners from USA, from Sweden, from Germany, nowadays this is India, China. I believe in 1 year it will be also Vietnam.
Now I will not let you to go to China. Yeah? It will have enough of time, but not now. Yeah? I have two comments actually that will try to shift a little bit the debate, perhaps in Aleš's favor at that moment. First, I think the trade theory with no scale advantage actually allows for subsidization and effectively tells you that this is to the benefit of country importing subsidized product. So if you have a commodity-based thing, there's no need to even defend against unfair subsidies, yeah? Because your consumer benefits, yeah? He gets something cheaper, not bad. Yeah? And second, my comment, I think if there is in our territory a country that's playing more with industrial policies and China support and manufacturer support, it's Hungary for sure. No matter actually even before Orban, yeah? It was a perfectly socialist country. And again, having a look on long-term data, lower Hungary standards of life were first exceeded by Upper Hungary, i.e. Slovakia, standards of life about 10, 15 years ago. Now it's going to be caught up and superseded by Poles. And actually Romania, which will be extremely humiliating for Hungary, is growing that fast that it seems to be almost sure to reach the GDP per capita, meaning standards of life effectively, of Hungary in a few years. Yeah. So in this respect, the example of more active economic policy in our region is not that promising. And Artur, I do not remember you mentioning Hungary as a place for neither production or research, despite it's close to Slovakia. It's even closer to Slovakia, actually. So in this respect, I have doubts. At the same time, of course, if we talk big economy of scale industry, you named the space industry, but the same exercise we got in aircraft industry, with Airbuses effectively killing the monopoly of US Boeing, probably to the benefit of most of the world. Yes, there are cases like that if you have a big economies of scale. If you feel like reacting, please do so, and then we may jump on China.
So maybe to briefly react, yeah. So I think on several things you are right with regards to Hungary, but we shouldn't underestimate that in Hungary there are also other things at play that are hindering the macro development. I wouldn't consider the industrial policy so super negative. We have a lot of mismanagement on the macro side, on the fiscal side, that is eating up the growth perspective as well. The industrial policy, I wouldn't see too negative, but okay, I think, as always, economists can debate. Otherwise, I'm fully with you, and what you mentioned, yeah, we have some examples where we broke certain monopolies to the benefit of the European consumers and the world economy. Yeah? And that's why I think it's legitimate to think about such policies in certain sectors. And I would see it also in the security and the defense sector you mentioned previously, because here it's also about multi-annual planning, yeah, really big investments, yeah, and why not, yeah, to think here about the decent industrial policy. And look what the US is sometimes doing, and look also on the spillovers the US has in terms of the very close cooperation between private sector, public sector in the defense industry. Yeah? So, and I would see this as a legitimate sector to think about certain tools and also multi-annual fiscal security, how to finance it for Europe. Yeah? And given the fact that the three largest economies in Europe are heavily restricted on the fiscal space. Yeah? It's France, it's Spain, it's Italy. Yeah? Having public debt to GDP ratios close to 100% of GDP. And we need defense spending of 3 to 4% of GDP on a sustained basis in Europe. And I think we won't get a policy compromise on such things without an industrial policy. Yeah? An industrial policy is not just about putting things, you know, into practice, but to make it also politically acceptable. Yeah? And if we look back, the largest EU countries have a history of spending 3 to 4 to 5% of GDP on defense in the 60s, yeah? And we have built good industries based on that one. So we have a capable defense industry in Europe. Yeah? So I wouldn't underestimate such effects, and it's not just about, you know, putting money on the table, but getting policy alignment.
Artur, you must have a thought on security and its relationship to industry, US versus Europe, because I understand from you, you started in defense, am I right? And you also export grant to US, so you can compare. What do you think? Which part of the world does it better, and why?
You know, this is difficult to say. Yes, I have military education, and I remember when our customers was in powder metallurgy in the beginning. When I started with my father, it was plants with more than 100 people in one place, and military production was 95% of their production. But in Europe, this is really very difficult. I can say that if I compare from, let's say, firearm industry, our customers, and even way of communication in Europe and USA, in Europe this is unbelievable slowly, unbelievable. You must write the same question 20 times, this is reality, 20 times, you must call, finally maybe somebody start move in this company. In USA, if they want, you receive call back in few minutes. So this is very, because I don't know, generally if they need and want something, reaction, communication is absolutely immediately. Here is very difficult to make some business in firearm or in any defense, because it's everything covered by government. In each country this is different government, and from Slovakia it's really very difficult to go somewhere. And this is, but my decision to make it in Slovakia remain the same, because from Hungary it will be even more difficult because of political aspects.
Thanks. Aleš, would you like to comment to what Ginter has said, or Artur in that sake? Still, so you have a chance.
Just one comment on about Europe and the US. Of course, the discussion about the competition versus industrial policy is also about the future of Europe, because we are at DG competition. We used to say we are not regulators, we are enforcers. So we are enforcing rules, but other DGs like DG Klima, etc., they like regulations. So the future of the Europe will depend also on if we decide really to have more regulations, to have more industrial policies. So it will be more difficult for Europeans to compete. And I know many companies investing already now in the United States, because it's much easier to invest there. So our discussion, competition versus industrial policy, is also about the future of the Europe. Do we want more regulation? For example, Americans told us we are in Brussels best in world when regulating. So, and to some extent they are right, because we have developed regulations for artificial intelligence, for the digital markets, but is it so important that they are best in regulation? Me personally, I would be best in enforcing competition rules.
Well, now when you made this grand statement, and you feel at ease, I believe, it's a time to ask you a question. So you think that the Commission doesn't really work as an enforcer of rulings, that everything that Germany wants is fine, being it abandonment of Dublin treaties on migration, being it enforcing Green Deal, and then energy subsidizing its whole industry at the expense of everybody else? I mean, don't you feel this is after this statement there is something lacking in that respect?
You are right that we can discuss that some bigger member states are more powerful than others. I can give you many examples from my own work, because we are also controlling so-called state aid granted to member states. We have, as a DG competition, we have monopoly, and I can see that bigger member states, they get approval faster and etc. But it's not about competition, it's about policy making. It's a different topic. But of course, in my world, we are trying to do our best for every country. So, for example, Dukovany notification was not 2 years because of problems on our side, but because of problems of the other side. So I can give you many examples.
Give me an example when you stepped significantly with heart on toes of Germany in last years. That would be strong, nice example. I mean, publicly you can talk about what you ruled. Yeah. So there should be one example.
I must say that I cannot speak publicly about our cases, so I will give you
despite the fact that they are already out?
Yes, because I was working on several, and decision doesn't mean end of story, because you can go to Luxembourg, to the Court of Justice, etc. So, but in general terms, I believe that the controlling of state aid is a good tool, but of course, it's very difficult. The pressure, for example, of France and Germany is so strong that sometimes you have to agree quickly with the major state aid, like, for example, for energy sector in Germany. So that's a political reality. But I'm speaking about the rules are good. Competition rules like a state aid control is good. But the other thing is how we use these tools. So I would be happy if, for example, the next commissioner would be strong personality, competition commissioner, and he will be able to let's say, to discuss with big member states to avoid this possibility. So, so basically, it's all about people. I'm speaking about rules, competition rules, which are good, but you can always, let's say, enforce rule in a bad way. It's in criminal law, it's everywhere. But I'm speaking about the rules which, in my opinion, were perfect. But, of course, even these unperfect rules are still better than State Planning Commission.
Okay, so now we are about to jump in China. Well, they will not notice, so don't worry. But before we do so, let me two comments on what was said here. First on fiscal. Quite frankly, I am relatively happy that the country that claimed that the yogurt producer is a strategic defense industry, we know it's France, of course, has a space limited. Yeah? In this respect, I'm relatively relaxed. Yeah? And second thing we are going to jump on China. We will, and I'm sure you will ask also about India, but let's keep in mind simple numbers. Yeah? New Europe is almost of the size of, I think, 3/4 of size of Indian economy. Italy is about the same size like New Europe. Or if to put it in a different perspective, Poland is about 1/4 of all Indian economy, yeah, in terms of sheer economic size. So it's a growing, strongly growing part of the world, but it has nothing to compare so far with China. And with that, let me go to China as a manufacturer. I spent actually yesterday evening reading the blog of Noel Smith, who is a relatively famous blogger, and he quotes, just to start and enable you to react, he quotes six theories, 6 hypotheses why China is exporting and manufacturing so much. Yeah. First one, it's simply growing and manufacturing is part of this. Second, it has a problem of overcapacity and underconsumption. Actually, the world doesn't matter that much for Chinese manufacturing. It's surprising. They matter a lot for manufacturing export around the world, but these exports are in % of their production. The third one is there is a real comparative advantage of them producing things. The fourth one is they are trying to force us to industrialize, something close to what you have said. Fifth is, well, the ruler likes it, and China is a country ruled by the great ruler. Yeah? And the sixth, they are preparing for the war with us, or with US on Taiwan. So, and that's, I believe, good starter for China. So what would you like to say on China? Now you have a chance.
So, as I already tried to mention, in the end, China started with a development strategy that was maybe driven more by economic rationality and economic classical motives. Yeah? And developing the local market at some point is part of this agenda. And this happened in Japan, this happened in South Korea, and this was also when China was still playing according to the global rules we had, joining WTO, all this stuff. If you follow then the development path and the thinking about economy and economic policy, there are creeping changes underway, at least starting 2010 and later in China. It's not about economic development anymore, not developing the domestic economy. It's about getting the geo-economic and geopolitical leadership in a few years' time, maybe, or a few decades. They studied all, let me say, the historical periods where it was about technology, be it telegraphs or railroads in the past, and you need to have global leadership in core technologies to be the leading superpower. And this is the ultimate policy agenda there. We have to understand that economics is just on the sidelines. And secondly, they are super prepared already for a conflict with us. They have a double economy. They have an economy depending still on the world economy, and they have an economy that can function on its own. Yeah? And as long as we don't want to see this reality, we are fully underestimating what's happening there. And just a minor thing, and on the sidelines, what happens here in the region, and Hungary was mentioned. Hungary is a prime example how we can have rules on state aid and whatever, and it's with regulations and rules everywhere. It's a chicken and egg game. China knows very well how to circumvent these rules. The Chinese banks are there with super cheap financing and all this stuff, fostering the investments there, which are officially not state aid, yeah? Because the Chinese know how to manage that one. And that's why I'm a little bit more skeptical that just rules, competition and regulation will save us.
Super, super. Second such example could be Russian influence in Austrian finance business, isn't it?
Up to a certain extent, I wouldn't exactly say that one, yeah, because we are trying to get rid of that one, yeah, why I think Hungary is more and more...
Somehow slower than with everybody else.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
fine.
but this makes a very interesting point, yeah, because what happened to us as Raiffeisen Bank International, yeah, is that you see, once you're exposed to geopolitics, it's very hard to exit. So better you don't take too much geopolitical risk. And secondly, once again, a small Central European country like Austria has a limited leeway, and even Europe has a limited leeway. We wanted to carry out a legally sound exit transaction that was not touching US jurisdiction and dollar. And suddenly US found out that they don't like the transaction. But this is geoeconomics we are talking.
Well, Arthur, why aren't you producing in China? I mean, of course, comment on China whatever you want, but also tell us why aren't you producing in China? What would you find as a worst?
Our products are very sophisticated, really unique. And I never visit China, but historically it's make 10% of our turnover and still grow. Usually we develop for our European customers, if they have assembling plant in China, we deliver also in China. And what is important, many times we recognize they would like to make a copy, but we don't afraid because in the same time we already work for their mother company in Europe to develop next generation product for them. And by the way, mother company usually also help us, let's say, to be safe, to avoid any copies. I would like only give very small and very simple, because very sophisticated things now I hear, and one word I don't understand, but I would like to say my experience with China and industry. 25 years ago, I was in a very 1 week long, let's say, conference in powder metallurgy and in Sweden. In Sweden, this is, let's say, where metallurgy is born. And we was very small company, no machines, no money, nothing. But I already received our first order. And I take sample. And during this conference, where it was from all countries, was engineers in powder metallurgy, really, from all Europe. And I show them, I say, hey guys, we drink Absolute. They say, guys, please help me, you are expert, how to do this part. Everything, not possible, not possible. By powder metallurgy, with my smallest press, my biggest press was 16 ton, it was necessary 100 ton, huge machine like this room. They said, no, 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 no. And finally, I saw guys from India, and I asked them, hey guys, this is problem. What do you think? They said, do you really have no machine? I said, no. Necessary thing how to do this. Let's go. And we spent 2 evenings to discuss. And in the same or next evening, I asked also Chinese engineers. I said, guys, I have not 100 ton press, but I need to produce this part. They said, very simple. If you need, it is necessary, find a way how to produce. Go with us. And also, it was only these 2 or 3 delegates from Slovakia. It was me, India, and China, who stopped drink Absolute, free of charge, and we think how to produce parts. This philosophy, this mentality in Europe, we are not able to win.
I see. Thanks. I may ask you, or actually, and what do you think apart mentality we should do on China? I I've been several times in Armenia. Honestly, you are, for me, representative of one of the smartest nations in the world, thanks to, I would say, necessity simply to survive in your part of the world. Yeah? So you must have also some general thoughts. And I understand. So what do you think on what shall we do in Europe on China?
Fight.
Thanks. Okay. Aleš, what is your take on competition in China?
I must say that I do not understand what you mean by fight. Fighting, I mean, for example, for me, what is really, from the competition point of view, as I said, the real problem are subsidies. Chinese companies are using subsidies, competing with European companies, and it's very difficult really to tackle this issue. So that's real competition problem, and we have to find a solution. But for the rest, I think we have to think in political way, like, I don't know, maybe Buy Europe Act. It means to, buy European, you remember this American approach. So then you have to find political solutions. But from my competition point of view, really is fighting subsidies is a major part of the problem.
Okay, I believe we will have a chance to, and I hope we have inspired some questions in our audience. But at this moment, let me do a few statements. First, I'm not just saying whether it suffices in somebody who is about almost 2 times stronger to have rules, because this is not a one-way game. I mean, like the answer may be okay, so quit, so forget importing batteries from us, for example, and we are done. Yeah? But let's face it. I believe part of the relatively nice response of automotive is actually due to the fact that it realizes that if it fights a trade war with China, it may be the victim, simply because it invested too much to EVs to be able to live without Chinese batteries. Yeah? Second thing, Ginter, you said years, but if there is one chapter that's pretty interesting in otherwise pretty boring Singer on China book, yeah? It's the first chapter in which he explains that Chinese do not think in years or even decades. They are the only civilization that takes itself as an eternal civilization. Yeah? If they are conquered by somebody, they make him Chinese. Yeah? Mongolians conquered Beijing several times and they became Chinese because it was simply a lot more comfortable way of life. Yeah? So Chinese think themselves as eternal, so they have time. Yeah? They are not thinking in years or decades. Perhaps the leader may feel that he wants to accomplish something, but for Chinese civilization, the eternal mentality is the thing that works for them. And the third one, honestly, it seemed to me we tend to forgetting in Europe on fighting China. Eh? If America changes its interest to focus on China mostly, the only way how can Europe attract attention is to start cooperating with China. Because then US will be in competitive pinch, yeah, to decide who they want to really engage with, yeah, in areas that it's possible. Yeah. So I would just say these things. I think quite a few of questions I would expect to be on China, but I wanted to do these qualifiers. And if any of you feels like he wants to say something before the coffee break, which will be punctual, please. Yeah.
Maybe 1 or 2 points. I'm also not saying we have to completely fight China, but we have to think about smart cooperation and thinking about our own interests. Yeah? So, for instance, this region, Central Europe, in the past had also huge trade deficits with Germany at the beginning of the transition. Then Germany invested here. There was technology transfer and the trade deficits decreased. There is some rationality in Chinese investments, but we have to make sure that there is technology transfer, we have to make sure that there is local investments, and I'm not seeing this awareness in dealing with Chinese investments. Yeah? And as I mentioned earlier, also the Chinese had a lot of restrictions for us entering the market. And this is for me also part of industrial policy, by the way. Not sure if this is regulation or industrial policy, but smart cooperation, I think this is the way to go.
Artur? No? No. Okay, so let's go for a coffee break and let's return exactly at 20 minutes, meaning 2:40.